In a parched riverbed, laborers stumble upon an unexpected discovery, a submarine. Intrigued, they can't resist investigating. After deciphering the entry mechanism, they pry open the hatch. As they peer inside, their faces instantly drain of color, horrified by what they've uncovered. The trio of salvagers, Peter, Jeff, and Tom, were no strangers to unusual finds in their line of work. Yet, nothing could have prepared them for the discovery of an abandoned submarine in a dried-up riverbed far from any body of water. The massive, rusted hull stood before them like an alien artifact, its presence in this desolate landscape defying explanation. Curiosity overrode caution as they forced their way inside the decaying vessel. The stale air inside was thick with decades of accumulated dust, forcing them to cover their faces as they ventured deeper. Their initial excitement quickly gave way to disappointment as they found compartment after compartment stripped bare of anything valuable. After an hour of fruitless searching, Tom and Jeff were ready to cut their losses. Even Peter, the most optimistic of the group, was on the verge of conceding defeat. However, as they made their way towards the exit, Peter noticed something odd. Fresh footprints near a concealed hatch in the submarine's floor, secured by a padlock. Intrigued by this anomaly, the salvagers decided on one last gamble. They set to work breaking the lock, the sound of their tools echoing through the empty corridors. When the padlock finally gave way, they were greeted not by a storage compartment, but by a ladder descending into darkness. With a mixture of trepidation and anticipation, the three men switched on their flashlights and began their descent. As they reached the bottom, their beams swept across a room that had remained hidden for who knows how long. What secrets lay concealed in this unexpected chamber? The salvagers held their breath, knowing that whatever they discovered next could change everything. A switch, Peter noted, flicking it on. Unexpectedly, 4 LED lights illuminated the space, 3 mounted on rusty metal walls, while the 4th adorned a sleek stainless steel surface. Jeff's unease grew. "This doesn't feel right. Maybe we should go." But Peter's determination hadn't wavered. "We've come too far to turn back now. Let's see this through." He activated a button beside the steel wall, revealing a hidden, well-lit corridor. Ventilation pipes ran along the ceiling, leading to another door at the far end. Peter led confidently with Tom and Jeff following close behind. Opening the door revealed a startling sight, a fully furnished office. "This is getting weird," Jeff muttered, "like something out of a horror film." A modern laptop sat on the desk, alongside a flash drive and a half-empty coffee mug. "Someone's been here recently," Peter observed, his curiosity piqued further. Tom's attention was drawn to a bookshelf. He pulled at an odd handle-shaped volume, triggering a hidden mechanism. Another passageway appeared behind the shelving. The first rooms they explored were empty, save for an untouched camera. Tom suggested leaving, growing increasingly uneasy, but their shared curiosity drove them forward. The final chamber they encountered was secured with chains. Using their tools, they managed to break in. What they found inside left them stunned. 2 frightened children huddled in a corner. Peter approached cautiously, speaking softly. "It's okay. We're not here to hurt you." The children's faces were etched with fear and exhaustion. "They'll be back soon," the girl whispered, her voice trembling. Peter's concern deepened. "Who? How did you end up here?" The situation had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a routine salvage operation had now become something far more complex and potentially dangerous. Peter, Jeff, and Tom listened intently as the children, Matt and Mary, recounted their harrowing ordeal. They had been abducted from school by masked men in a black van, held for ransom in the submarine. The kidnappers were en route to collect the payment from the children's desperate parents. The gravity of the situation hit the salvagers hard. Jeff, trying to reassure the frightened kids, promised, "We'll get you out of here safely." As they prepared to leave, Peter remembered the flash drive they'd spotted earlier. With Jeff's help, he quickly retrieved it from the laptop. Tom, who had briefly disappeared, rejoined them, clutching the camera they'd seen earlier. "This might have crucial evidence," he explained. They hastily exited the submarine with the children and drove away in their truck. Peter, feeling responsible for involving his colleagues in such a dangerous situation, apologized profusely. Their first stop was the hospital to have Matt and Mary examined. They also alerted the authorities about the impending ransom exchange. As police officers arrived to take statements, Tom and Jeff sat shell-shocked in the waiting room, struggling to process the day's events. Peter, however, seemed surprisingly composed. When questioned about his calm demeanor, he dropped a bombshell. "What I'm about to tell you is classified," Peter began. "I'm not really a salvage worker. I'm an undercover CIA agent investigating a string of kidnappings in this area. Joining your company was my way of getting close to the suspects." Tom's shock quickly turned to anger. "Are you kidding me? You put our lives at risk." Peter looked genuinely remorseful. "I never expected to find those kids in a submarine. I knew the kidnappers used abandoned structures, but this was unexpected." The revelation left Tom and Jeff reeling, forced to reassess everything they thought they knew about their colleague and the day's extraordinary events. "What happens now?" Jeff asked, his anger giving way to curiosity. Peter sighed. "If we can apprehend the suspects, hopefully this kidnapping ring will be shut down for good." Tom, still skeptical, pressed further. "Why has it taken so long to catch these guys?" Peter explained the challenges they'd faced: masked perpetrators, voice distortion, constantly changing vehicles, and the use of random individuals for money collection. The criminals had been meticulous about leaving no trace. "But now," Peter said, holding up the flash drive, "we might finally have an edge." As they examined the drive's contents, their shock deepened. The files revealed a network far more extensive and insidious than they'd imagined, implicating local politicians, a police officer, a school principal, and a real estate agent. The real estate agent likely sourced the hideouts, Peter mused, and the principal probably provided information on potential targets. They uncovered a calendar of planned operations, each date marked in ominous red. Turning to the camera, they found footage of children at school and home, along with details of their parents' routines. The scope of the surveillance was chilling. Peter knew they had to act quickly. He suggested Jeff and Tom head home, but they refused. "We're in this together now," they insisted, determined to see it through. As Peter prepared to brief his trusted police contacts, his phone rang. After a moment of tense silence, he cursed loudly and hung up. The sudden outburst left Jeff and Tom on edge, wondering what new complication had arisen in this already complex and dangerous situation. "What happened?" Tom asked. "The kidnappers picked up the ransom from the drop-off point and made a run for it. The police are in pursuit, but there's a chance they might slip away again," Peter replied. "They won't this time," Jeff said, pulling the truck keys from his pocket and handing them to Peter. "Let's go after them." The three men jumped into the truck and sped off toward the drop-off location. Peter's contact at the station had informed them that the kidnappers were heading east toward a nearby residential neighborhood. That's where they would begin their search. As they drove, Peter's mind raced with thoughts of all the families they had failed, thanks to the powerful players working against them. He was certain that a corrupt officer had been tipping off the kidnappers every time the police got too close, and it was likely happening again. The kidnappers were probably being directed away from the police to a place the authorities couldn't access without solid evidence. But then, Peter began to smile. The police cruisers might be easy to spot, but no one would suspect an old, beat-up pickup truck like theirs. If they entered the neighborhood unnoticed, they could catch the criminals off guard. Residents looked on, puzzled, as a tactical team quietly moved through the streets, securing the area to prevent any escape. But everything seemed normal. Cars in garages, neighbors unable to recall anything suspicious. Peter's gut told him one thing: the kidnappers were blending in, living among these people unnoticed. Handing the wheel to Jeff, Peter led their slow drive around the neighborhood under the guise of scouting for new clients. That's when they got their first break. An elderly woman mentioned a man down the street who always seemed interested in abandoned properties. "He must be a treasure hunter," she said. But Peter's instincts went on high alert. Thanking her for the tip, they drove to the man's house. Before getting out, Peter discreetly signaled their location to his fellow officers, instructing them to surround the area but keep their distance from the house. "Stay in the truck," Peter told Jeff and Tom before stepping out. He approached the house and knocked on the door. When it opened, the man standing there was flushed, breathless, as if he had just returned from a run. Peter flashed him a confident smile. "Hello," Peter said. "I heard you're always on the lookout for abandoned buildings. I work for a salvage company, and we just stumbled upon something unusual. An abandoned submarine in a dried-up river just outside of town. Interested in checking it out with me? I could use your expertise." The man's face went pale. "No!" he shouted, slamming the door shut in Peter's face. Peter simply shrugged and returned to the truck, telling Jeff to drive away and park somewhere out of sight. A few minutes later, the silence was broken by the screech of tires as a black van sped past them. Inside were 3 people, looking frantic and in a rush, but their escape was short-lived. Police cruisers swarmed the van, blocking its path. Armed officers leapt from their vehicles, shouting commands for the occupants to step out with their hands raised. Within moments, the 3 men were handcuffed, and in less than 2 hours at the station, the police had secured a full confession. They were indeed the kidnappers. When Peter mentioned the submarine, the kidnappers had panicked and raced to the river, thinking they could free the children before anyone else found them. What they didn't know was that the kids were already safe, being treated at the hospital. Back at the station, Peter and his friends were met with cheers and applause. They had cracked one of the biggest cases in the country, something that had eluded authorities for months. At the hospital, the children were reunited with their families, and soon after, the politician, the corrupt cop, and other members of the organization were arrested based on the kidnappers' confessions. Tom and Jeff, though inexperienced in police work, were hailed as heroes for their part in saving the children. As for Peter, his heart swelled with joy. Not only had he helped put dangerous criminals behind bars, but he had also reunited 2 terrified children with their grateful parents, sparing them the agony of a ransom. What an unbelievable turn of events. But let me ask you, what would you do if you found a submarine in a dried-up river? Would you explore it or would you call the authorities? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video.